You think you remember the comfort foods of the 1960s and 70s? Think again. Countless dishes that once warmed American kitchens and filled family tables have quietly vanished from our collective memory. Let's dig into 60 comfort foods from the 1960s and 70s that have disappeared. Crispy cheese and cracker stack was a beloved no-cook snack in many 1960s American homes, consisting of neatly layered slices of cheese and crisp crackers assembled for easy serving and eating. This simple but satisfying recipe required only the choice of favorite cheeses, such as sharp cheddar, Swiss, or processed cheese slices, stacked between crackers to create bite-sized, flavorful snacks. The delightful contrast between the crunchy texture of the crackers and the smooth or firm texture of the cheese made this dish a favorite at family gatherings, cocktail parties, and casual snacks alike. These stacks could be put together in minutes, making them an ideal last-minute appetizer or easy-to-grab snack option. The recipe reflected the mid-century American appreciation for convenience combined with familiar and comforting flavors. Though modern snack trends have evolved toward more elaborate or health-focused options, crispy cheese and cracker stacks remain a nostalgic favorite for those who remember classic party fare, representing a time when simple ingredients and minimal preparation were the keys to enjoyable, entertaining, and quick bite. Shepherd's pie with mashed potato topping was a 1970s classic that stretched a small amount of meat into a full, comforting family dinner. Leftover roast beef, ground beef, or even chicken was combined with gravy and an assortment of vegetables, sometimes fresh, sometimes frozen, and layered in a baking dish. A generous topping of creamy mashed potatoes covered the filling, and baking until the top turned golden brown gave the dish a satisfying contrast of textures. This was one of the best ways to avoid waste, turning odds and ends from the fridge into something that felt like a proper Sunday dinner. Because the recipe was so flexible, no two versions were ever exactly alike, yet they all carried that same familiar sense of warmth and comfort. Families appreciated that it could be made ahead and reheated on busy nights, and the smell of it in the oven often had everyone gathering in the kitchen before it was ready. In many homes, shepherd's pie was proof that even the most modest leftovers, with a little creativity, could be transformed into a meal that felt rich and memorable. Stuffed tomato boats floated right into many mid-century cookbooks as a budget-friendly way to transform fresh produce into a satisfying dinner. Large tomatoes were carefully hollowed and filled with a mixture of cooked rice, finely chopped celery, onion, and a light drizzle of mayonnaise dressing for moisture. Sometimes a sprinkle of paprika or a handful of breadcrumbs was added on top for color and texture. This simple combination delivered a surprising amount of flavor and a pleasing balance between the juicy tomato walls and the warm rice filling. Home cooks appreciated how the recipe allowed them to use leftover rice and vegetables, reducing waste while creating something pretty enough for company. In summer months, when gardens overflowed with ripe tomatoes, these stuffed boats provided a refreshing alternative to heavier casseroles. They were served chilled for a cool supper or lightly baked when the weather turned cold, proving their versatility across the seasons. Their bright presentation made them a standout dish for picnics, church potlucks, or a light Friday night family meal. Few desserts carry the warmth of tradition quite like a baked custard rice pudding. Reverent rice pudding was a staple at church gatherings, offering creamy comfort with a touch of cinnamon spice and the sweetness of raisins. It was the kind of dish that felt like home, evoking memories of simpler times when nothing in the pantry went to waste. Rice pudding's history stretches back centuries, with variations found in nearly every culture that had access to rice and milk. In the United States, it gained popularity during the 19th century, when rice became widely available and recipes emphasized frugality. By the 1970s, baked versions with eggs, milk, and sugar added a custardy richness, while cinnamon and raisins gave it a warm, familiar flavor. It was versatile, too, served as a dessert, a snack, or even a breakfast dish. But as dessert trends shifted in the late 20th century, rice pudding began to fade. Its humble simplicity couldn't compete with the rise of more decadent sweets like chocolate lava cakes or the colorful allure of gelatin desserts. The time-intensive baking process also made it less appealing in an era of quick fixes. Cornbread and beans are another one that we unfortunately just left behind in the 70s. Healthy eating like that looks and sounds real good on paper. And don't get me wrong, people find ways to make it work in real life and practical application too. I mean, it didn't get to being such a popular staple crop for no reason, you know? Unfortunately, people tend to get tired of what they become too codependent on. Corn was abused so much as a crop during the 20th century, whether it was the massive amounts of overfarming for big-time canning companies or whether it was the massive amounts of corn that people were farming and putting to use during the Depression. Suffice it to say that cornbread definitely wasn't something people were waking up excited for, at least not well into the 2000s, when they were exposed to so many options from other cultures. Beans are still a regional favorite, and in the South, there's still a deep-found appreciation for cultural foods like black beans. They just don't really make the front of the cookbook anymore, you know? Magic Pan crepe cakes come from those Magic Pan restaurants that made crepe dishes a big deal back in the 60s and 70s. Here's how they do it. They layer up thin crepes with all sorts of fillings, from sweet creams and fruits to savory cheeses and spinach. Basic crepe batter is pretty simple, just flour, eggs, milk, and butter. But when you stack them up and fill them just right, it turns into something special. Each layer was carefully assembled to ensure the flavors melded beautifully, providing a gourmet experience that was rare at the time. These crepe cakes were a hit because you could watch them being made right in front of you, which was pretty cool back then. Though they were a favorite for a while, as the Magic Pan spots closed down and eating out got more casual, crepe cakes weren't as common. When they served them, it was always with style, dressed up with a little sauce or a sprinkle of powdered sugar to make them look as good as they tasted. Curried cottage cheese spread was a flavorful cold dish that blended creamy cottage cheese with curry powder and fresh herbs, designed to be spread on crackers or toast. This recipe emerged during the 1960s when Americans were beginning to experiment with global flavors, incorporating mild curry spices into familiar dairy-based foods. The result was a spread that combined tanginess, spice, and creaminess, offering a unique twist on standard cheese spreads. It was quick to prepare, requiring only mixing of ingredients, making it an ideal 10-minute recipe for parties or light snacks. This spread reflected the era's growing curiosity about international cuisines and the desire to introduce new tastes into everyday meals. While curried cottage cheese spread is less common today, it remains a fascinating example of mid-century culinary experimentation and the blending of convenience with exciting flavors. Goulash with elbow macaroni was a hearty, crowd-pleasing dish that fit perfectly into the 1970s budget-conscious kitchen. Ground beef was browned with onions, then simmered in a tomato-based sauce seasoned with paprika, garlic, and sometimes a pinch of sugar for balance. Elbow macaroni was cooked right in the sauce, soaking up every bit of flavor while saving on extra pots to wash. This dish was ideal for stretching a small amount of meat across multiple servings, with the pasta and sauce providing the bulk of the meal. It could be served immediately for dinner or reheated for lunches throughout the week without losing its appeal. In many households, goulash became a go-to for family gatherings or church suppers because it was inexpensive, filling, and easy to make in large quantities. The paprika gave it a warm, distinctive taste that stood out from other pasta dishes, and its simplicity meant even beginner cooks could master it. Many families added their own twists, extra vegetables, cheese, or herbs to suit their tastes. The end result was always a steaming, satisfying plate of food that comforted on cold nights and stretched the grocery budget just a little bit further with every serving. Green bean croquettes brought new life to leftover vegetables, turning them into crispy patties that satisfied even the pickiest eaters. Cooked green beans were mashed with breadcrumbs, a beaten egg, and a sprinkle of herbs, then shaped into small rounds and pan-fried until golden on the outside and soft within. This dish allowed thrifty homemakers to stretch a handful of beans into a full meal, pairing perfectly with a dollop of ketchup or a simple white sauce. Children loved the crunch, and parents appreciated the low cost and quick preparation time. Green bean croquettes also demonstrated the growing influence of European cooking techniques in American kitchens, where frying and breadcrumb coatings were becoming increasingly popular. Served alongside a salad or a scoop of mashed potatoes, they brought variety and texture to the dinner table without adding strain to the grocery budget. Their lasting charm lies in the way they prove that even the simplest leftovers can be turned into something special when treated with care and creativity. Hominy and bacon casserole offered hearty satisfaction with minimal ingredients, highlighting how resourcefulness defined many mid-century meals. Creamy canned hominy provided a naturally sweet base that absorbed the smoky flavor of crisp bacon bits sprinkled throughout. A light sauce of milk and butter bound everything together before baking, creating a dish with comforting richness despite its simplicity. Families often served it as a main course with a side of green vegetables or a slice of cornbread, making it a complete and inexpensive dinner. Hominy's long shelf life and low price made it a dependable pantry staple, while just a few strips of bacon added enough depth to please meat lovers without straining the budget. The casserole reheated beautifully, so leftovers were welcomed for quick lunches the next day. Its combination of smooth texture and smoky taste made it popular at potlucks and church gatherings where thrifty recipes were always appreciated. Hominy and bacon casserole remains a testament to how modest ingredients can deliver true comfort and memorable flavor when prepared with care and creativity. Back in the late 70s, Jell-O rolled out Pudding Pops, turning the frozen treat game on its head with something way creamier than the usual ice pops. Made from milk, sugar, and pudding mix, these pops were all about delivering a super smooth, rich taste. At their peak, Pudding Pops were so popular that they spawned a range of flavors, including chocolate, vanilla, and swirls. They totally stood out, thanks in part to those catchy Bill Cosby ads shouting, "Pudding in a pop." That marketing charm made these treats a big deal in households across the board. But even with their popularity, Kraft decided to cut them from the lineup in the early 2000s. They were trying to slim down their product range. The bright, fun packaging and that quirky non-wood stick are what a lot of folks remember about them. Sweet potato and raisin mash was a simple yet comforting side dish that brought together the natural sweetness of canned sweet potatoes with juicy raisins in an effortless mash. Popular during the 1960s, this recipe capitalized on pantry staples that required minimal prep but delivered satisfying flavor and texture. The sweet potatoes were mashed until smooth and mixed with plump raisins, creating a balance of creamy and chewy elements. Often served alongside main courses, this dish was prized for its sweetness and convenience, making it a common choice for busy weeknight dinners or holiday meals. Its quick preparation time fit well into the 10-minute recipe trend, offering families a way to add variety and warmth to the table without complex cooking techniques. While modern variations of sweet potato dishes tend to be more elaborate, the straightforward sweet potato and raisin mash stands as a nostalgic reminder of the resourceful, flavorful meals that defined 1960s American kitchens. Baked bean and hot dog bake turned two of the cheapest grocery staples into something both kids and adults could not wait to eat. Large cans of baked beans were stirred together with sliced hot dogs and baked until the mixture was bubbling and thick, filling the kitchen with a sweet, smoky aroma. A topping of breadcrumbs or shredded cheese was sometimes added if the budget allowed, turning it into something even more special. The natural sweetness of the beans balanced perfectly with the salty smokiness of the hot dogs, making it taste indulgent even though it cost very little to prepare. This was the kind of dish you could bring to a school potluck, a church supper, or a casual weeknight dinner and know it would be gone in minutes. Some cooks tossed in chopped onions, peppers, or even a splash of mustard for extra tang, while others kept it simple for the pickiest eaters. Served alongside cornbread or a crisp green salad, it was a complete, satisfying meal that embodied the thrifty yet crowd-pleasing spirit of 1970s home cooking. Cheddar grits casserole brought Southern comfort to weeknight tables while cleverly using scraps to stretch a grocery dollar. Cooked grits were stirred with sharp cheddar cheese, a splash of milk, and any small bits of leftover ham before being baked until the top formed a golden crust. The creamy base and salty accents provided warmth and satisfaction, making it a favorite for cool evenings or family gatherings. Because grits were inexpensive and widely available, this casserole offered a filling main dish that fed many mouths without straining a budget. Home cooks often prepared it in the morning and reheated it for supper, appreciating how well it held its texture. Children loved the mild cheese flavor, while adults enjoyed the hearty, stick-to-your-ribs appeal. Paired with a green salad or simple stewed tomatoes, the dish delivered balanced comfort with little expense or effort. Its staying power in community cookbooks and church potluck menus shows how thrifty Southern traditions easily blended with mid-century convenience to create a meal everyone could enjoy. In the days when nothing went to waste, a pot of slow-cooked beans with hog jowls and onions was a way of life. Rooted in Southern cooking traditions, this hearty meal was a staple at church potlucks and community gatherings. Pinto beans, rich in protein and fiber, were an affordable way to feed a crowd, while hog jowls, a cut from the cheek of the pig, added smoky, savory depth that transformed the humble legume into something extraordinary. Historically, this dish thrived in communities where resourcefulness was key. Hog jowls, often considered a byproduct, were a favorite in Southern cuisine, where the whole hog philosophy reigned supreme. Combined with onions and slow cooking, the result was a dish that was simple yet deeply flavorful. And let's not forget the practicality. Beans are inexpensive, shelf-stable, and could simmer all day while the cook tackled other tasks. But as modern tastes shifted, hog jowls fell out of favor. Health trends, coupled with the rise of leaner meats, left this dish behind in the dust of culinary history. Convenience foods like canned beans and pre-seasoned mixes didn't help either. Now, I'll tell you what worked in the South and everywhere else. Fried bologna sandwiches. Hey, even the vegans had to reconsider. If you can't beat them, join them, right? No, seriously, these sandwiches were just that good. I don't know if they made bologna better back in the day or if they just laced it with magic drugs, but people were addicted, and I mean bad. This was the working class meal, especially in rural areas. Bologna wasn't only just delicious, it was also insanely affordable and one of the easiest meat products you could ever hope to get. In a post-war America where meat prices still hadn't fully recovered and become what they used to be, bologna sandwiches were more or less a godsend for everyone in the country. A budget-friendly meal before your long, grueling shift with a dash of protein to save your day and nutritional needs. Frying the bologna was also something people deeply took to because of how much flair it would add overall. A simple slice of bologna and some bread slices became the saving grace of many people's days back in the 70s. Peanut butter and jelly roll-ups were a fun and easy snack that became a favorite among families in the 1960s for their simplicity and kid-friendly appeal. This recipe involved spreading creamy peanut butter and sweet jelly or jam onto soft tortillas or flatbreads, then rolling them tightly and slicing into bite-sized pieces. The combination of salty peanut butter with fruity jelly created a classic flavor pairing loved by children and adults alike. The roll-up format added a playful twist, turning a traditional sandwich into a finger food that was perfect for lunchboxes, parties, or quick snacks on the go. This recipe required no cooking and could be prepared in minutes, reflecting the decade's growing trend toward convenient and portable foods. Peanut butter and jelly roll-ups also represented the era's embrace of processed foods and easy meal solutions that fit busy lifestyles. While the basic sandwich remains popular, the roll-up presentation adds nostalgic charm and practicality that make this dish a timeless quick recipe loved across generations. Baked ziti with cottage cheese was a frugal twist on a beloved Italian-American classic. Instead of using ricotta, which could be expensive, cottage cheese provided a creamy, tangy layer between the pasta and sauce. The dish was assembled with cooked ziti, tomato sauce, a bit of mozzarella for melting, and the cottage cheese for richness. Baked until bubbling and slightly browned on top, it was a hearty meal that could be made ahead and reheated. This casserole-style pasta was perfect for busy families, as it could stretch to feed many and used pantry-friendly ingredients. In the 1970s, such substitutions were common, and home cooks took pride in creating satisfying meals without overspending. The result was a dinner that tasted indulgent while remaining budget-friendly. Mock veal loaf delivered the flavor of expensive cuts without the price, an idea perfectly suited to the frugal 1960s kitchen. Ground pork was blended with breadcrumbs, minced onion, and a touch of milk before being seasoned with a bit of sage and pepper to mimic the gentle taste of veal. The mixture was shaped into a loaf and baked until the top formed a golden crust and the inside stayed moist and tender. A light tomato glaze or brown gravy completed the illusion, giving families a hearty centerpiece that felt far fancier than its ingredients suggested. This recipe became a favorite in community cookbooks and church fundraisers because it fed a crowd with ingredients already on hand. Leftovers made excellent sandwiches the next day, stretching the value even further. By transforming simple pork and pantry staples into something that seemed luxurious, mock veal loaf embodied the clever resourcefulness that defined many mid-century American dinners, proving that satisfying flavor did not require an expensive shopping list or complicated preparation. Baked apple desserts have long been a staple of American cooking, and Alter Apple Betty was a quintessential example of turning humble ingredients into something extraordinary. Made with sliced apples, a fragrant cinnamon-spiced oat topping, and brown sugar for sweetness, this dish was a warm, rustic treat that often graced church potluck tables and family dinners alike. Its roots can be traced back to colonial America, where frugal cooks used seasonal fruits and pantry staples to create desserts that didn't require elaborate preparation. The beauty of Apple Betty was its simplicity. No pie crust to fuss over, just a quick assembly of apples and a crumbly topping that baked to golden perfection. It was versatile, too, ideal as a dessert, a sweet breakfast, or even a snack when served cold. So why isn't it as common today? As dessert trends shifted, Apple Betty faced stiff competition from flashier options like pies, cobblers, and crisps. The recipe's old-fashioned simplicity, once a selling point, became overshadowed by desserts that promised more indulgence or visual appeal. Alter Apple Betty remains a nostalgic reminder of kitchens where everything was made from scratch and desserts were heartfelt contributions to the table. Vegetarian chili definitely had its heyday in the same time as those moments I was talking about. Listen, when I say movement, I don't mean a 3-day bandwagon full of peaceful sit-ins and protests like we have today. I mean, like nationally, parents everywhere were livid. They couldn't stand that their kids were actually preferring to stay inside with a McDonald's Happy Meal and the television screen, and lots of them became super proactive about their family's diet and eating habits because of the massive revamp in culture. I mean, in this same century, these people went from surviving off of foraging wild mushrooms to watching moving pictures on a screen, having a magic box that just cools all their food full-time, slow cookers, the internet, computers, and God knows what else. All this to say, it was a fast-paced era, and people reacted with what they knew worked: vegetables. If the Depression proved anything, it was that there was a massive problem with people's diets. It wasn't economical, and it definitely wasn't healthy, and the alternative wasn't as impossible to switch to as most people would have you believe. Circumstances like this saw the rise of vegetarian chili and vegan cookbooks, but unfortunately, it couldn't make the cut, especially in the South, where people just outright rejected it. Poke cake hit the scene in the 70s and got everyone excited because you could do so much with it. After baking a simple vanilla or chocolate cake, you poke holes all over it and fill those up with Jell-O, pudding, or sweetened condensed milk. This trick lets the filling soak into the cake, making it super moist and adding layers of flavor. Jell-O pushed this idea big time, showing everyone how a plain cake could turn into a showstopper. It was a hit because you could tweak it with different fillings depending on what you were into. But as tastes got more sophisticated and folks leaned towards less sugary stuff, poke cake kind of lost its spotlight. It was usually served in a big dish, looking casual and family-friendly. You'd often see it with a fluffy layer of whipped cream on top, maybe some fruit or sprinkles too, just to make those flavors pop. Chilled potato and green bean salad was a refreshing and popular vegetable side dish in 1960s America, made by combining boiled potatoes and green beans with a simple vinaigrette and serving it cold. This salad was especially favored during summer barbecues, picnics, and casual dinners because it provided a cool, light contrast to heavier grilled meats and rich main courses. The boiled potatoes offered a soft, comforting base that balanced well with the crisp, bright green beans, which added color and texture. The vinaigrette, typically made from vinegar, oil, and seasonings, brightened the dish without overpowering the fresh vegetables. Its tangy flavor helped cut through the richness of other dishes on the table, making it a perfect palate cleanser. The salad's quick preparation and ability to be made ahead of time made it especially practical for busy home cooks looking for easy but tasty side dishes. While modern potato salads often use creamy dressings, this lighter Tangier version remains a nostalgic reminder of mid-century American cuisine's preference for simple, vegetable-forward cold sides that complemented a variety of meals and seasons. Corn pudding casserole blended sweet and savory flavors into a side dish that could easily double as a main course for a light dinner. Made from canned corn, eggs, milk, sugar, and a small amount of flour or cornstarch, it baked into a soft, custard-like texture with a golden top. The sweetness of the corn was balanced by the richness of the eggs and milk, creating a comforting, almost dessert-like flavor. Corn pudding was often served at holiday meals, church suppers, or potlucks, but it was just as welcome on an ordinary weeknight. It was inexpensive to prepare, relying mostly on pantry staples, and could be scaled up easily to feed a large crowd. Leftovers reheated well, retaining their creamy texture, and the dish was versatile enough to pair with meats, vegetables, or even beans. In households that valued tradition, corn pudding was a nostalgic recipe passed down through generations, each family putting its own twist on the seasoning or sweetness. Its gentle flavor and simple preparation made it a reliable favorite, offering comfort and warmth in every spoonful without requiring much more than what was already in the kitchen pantry. In the mid-20th century, prunes enjoyed a moment in the culinary spotlight, and desserts like Prune Whip became surprisingly popular at gatherings. Light, airy, and subtly sweet, this dish combined stewed prunes with whipped egg whites to create a mousse-like treat that balanced indulgence with a touch of practicality. While it may not sound like the belle of the potluck table today, in its time, it was a creative way to transform a pantry staple into an elegant dessert. Prunes, or dried plums, were widely appreciated for their affordability and long shelf life. They were particularly common in post-war cooking, where resourceful homemakers turned simple ingredients into inventive recipes. With the rise of gelatin-based desserts, Prune Whip fit right into the trend of light, fluffy textures. It also offered a surprising nutritional bonus. Prunes were, and still are, known for their digestive benefits, making this dessert as functional as it was flavorful. By the late 20th century, however, Prune Whip fell out of favor. Healthier eating didn't hurt it. Marketing did. Prunes became saddled with a reputation as grandma food, overshadowing their versatility. Spam fried rice and the question of its immediate availability really are something that you would have to think about region to region. In Hawaii, in 2025, I guess, yeah, you could find places that were doing it, or really just make it yourself with any cheap brand of Spam. Everywhere else, though? It hasn't been such a good century for pineapples, really. The anti-pineapple propaganda press has never eased up entirely, at least not since pineapple pizzas were the next big laughingstock of the internet in the 2010s. While the days of hating on things like that are far in the past too, the general divisiveness on pineapples, and therefore Spam, hasn't really gone. Spam fried rice struggles to find a place for itself among today's menus of vegan-friendly food, fusion food from a mix of 3 different cuisines and cultures, fast food, convenience food, and all the other options that overwhelm our budgets and minds daily. In all of that, why look towards that lonely little can of Spam and a bag of rice? There are killer delis just down the corner, you know? And they deliver. Butterscotch brownies, or blondies, mix it up with brown sugar, butter, flour, eggs, and baking powder, all jazzed up with butterscotch chips. These goodies swapped out chocolate for a sweet caramel-like vibe and caught on fast. They were super easy to whip up, making them a go-to for anyone needing a quick dessert fix without the intense richness of chocolate. Their ease of preparation and ability to store well made them popular for potlucks, school functions, and holiday treat exchanges. Over time, though, as bakers got more into gourmet and unique flavors, blondies weren't the main event anymore. Usually, you'd find them cut into squares, laid out on a platter, perfect for grabbing a bite without any fuss. The combo of a chewy middle with a bit of crunch around the edges really made these stand out. Cheese and pineapple skewers were a cheerful, bite-sized appetizer that embodied the playful spirit of 1960s entertaining. Cubes of sharp cheddar cheese alternated with sweet pineapple chunks threaded onto toothpicks or cocktail sticks, creating an attractive and easy-to-eat party snack. The contrasting flavors of salty, savory cheese with juicy tropical pineapple made for a pleasing combination that delighted guests at cocktail parties, potlucks, and family gatherings. These skewers required no cooking and minimal preparation, allowing hosts to quickly assemble a tasty and visually appealing dish. This simple recipe reflected the era's fondness for finger foods that combined convenience with a touch of sophistication. Though the popularity of pineapple in savory dishes has waned, cheese and pineapple skewers remain a nostalgic symbol of mid-century Americana and its inventive yet accessible approach to casual entertaining. Macaroni and beef skillet dinners were a go-to weeknight meal in the 1970s because they only required one pan and a few cheap ingredients. Elbow macaroni was cooked directly in a tomato-based sauce, along with browned ground beef, onions, and whatever seasoning a cook had on hand. This method saved on both time and dishwashing, which mattered for busy families juggling work, school, and community life. The pasta soaked up all the flavors of the sauce, making the whole dish rich and hearty without needing a lot of meat. A small amount of cheese sprinkled on top was a treat, but even without it, the dish was flavorful and satisfying. For many families, this skillet meal was the definition of comfort food, filling, warm, and ready in under 30 minutes. It could easily be doubled to feed a crowd or packed up for the next day's lunch. The affordability and adaptability of macaroni and beef skillet made it a true staple, and its aroma cooking on the stove was often the sign that dinner was only minutes away. Tomato custard casserole turned two everyday items, canned tomatoes and eggs, into a richly flavored dinner that captured the resourcefulness of the 1960s. The eggs were whisked with milk and a pinch of sugar before being poured over chopped tomatoes and breadcrumbs, then baked until the custard set and the top turned slightly caramelized. This casserole provided protein, vitamins, and comfort all in one dish without requiring expensive meats or elaborate preparation. Many families served it with buttered toast or a simple green salad, letting the natural acidity of the tomatoes balance the creamy custard. The recipe became a reliable weeknight option because it used inexpensive pantry staples that were always on hand. Its smooth texture and gentle sweetness made it appealing to children, while adults appreciated the subtle complexity that developed as the tomatoes baked. This unassuming casserole is a testament to how mid-century cooks could transform basic ingredients into something hearty, nourishing, and surprisingly elegant with little more than patience and a hot oven. When it came to feeding a family on a tight budget, casseroles were the backbone of 1970s home cooking, and Hopeful Hot Dog Casserole was one of the era's most resourceful creations. Combining hot dogs, baked beans, and a cornbread topping, it turned simple, inexpensive ingredients into a dish that could feed a crowd with ease. It wasn't fancy, but it was undeniably comforting and a little fun. Hot dogs, introduced to American cuisine in the 19th century, became a kitchen staple by the mid-20th century thanks to their affordability and versatility. Pairing them with baked beans, another budget-friendly favorite, created a savory base with a hint of sweetness. The cornbread topping, inspired by Southern traditions, added texture and warmth, making this casserole feel a little more special than its components might suggest. It was quick to assemble, easy to bake, and hearty enough to fill hungry stomachs after a Sunday service. However, as palates shifted toward fresher, less processed foods, this casserole's reliance on packaged ingredients led to its decline. Hot dogs lost some of their appeal as health trends took hold, and the dish's humble simplicity began to feel dated. Another thing that was really exclusive to the 1970s was the country's rediscovered love for casseroles. Things like hot dog casseroles are just proof of this all around. But really, you had a casserole for just about every fruit, ingredient, and meat you had ever heard of. The deal with this one is that it was a cheap casserole and a super beginner-friendly one. Seriously, Your nephew could make this if you gave him honest instructions and believed in him enough. I mean, what really is there to do? You just take the pasta and the hot dogs, layer them casserole style, and pop them in the oven. Bam, you're done. And now you have enough food to either share with the family twice over or enough to last you the entire day and then some. Casseroles were super easy to make, convenient, and usually affordable, but could be made with super fancy ingredients if you were feeling like pushing your wallet and could fit just about any taste palette in the entire country. That made them pretty damn hard to beat. Plus, the 70s was known for being a massive return-to-work culture and the grind lifestyle for a lot of Americans, so the need for big, easy, and simple dishes was major. Nowadays, there are a lot of convenient apps and services to do that for you, so there's no need to bother with things like casseroles every other day. Napoleons, or millefeuilles, are these fancy pastries with layers of puff pastry and pastry cream, all topped off with this slick glazed icing. Originating from France in the 18th century and known for their thousand leaves, that's what millefeuille means, these pastries were a big hit in fancy bakeries for their classy look and delicate flavors, perfect for high-end events and fine dining spots. Making them was no small feat, though, and as lighter, simpler desserts became more popular recently, Napoleons started showing up less often. Usually, these pastries were served up in tidy rectangles, with the icing artfully done up to make them total eye candy. The super precise layers and that creamy, flaky vibe are what made munching on a Napoleon feel like a luxury. Tuna salad stuffed tomatoes were a colorful and nutritious 10-minute recipe featuring halved tomatoes filled with a quick tuna salad mixture, perfect for lunches or light dinners. The tuna salad was typically made by combining canned tuna with mayonnaise, chopped celery, onions, and seasonings, then spooned into hollowed tomato halves for a visually appealing presentation. This dish offered a refreshing balance of creamy, tangy tuna salad with the juicy, slightly acidic tomato, making it a satisfying yet light meal option. Popular in 1960s America, tuna salad stuffed tomatoes embodied the trend of combining convenience foods with fresh produce for speedy preparation. Served chilled, they were often enjoyed at picnics, buffets, or simple home meals. While less common today, this recipe remains a charming example of mid-century quick dishes that balance taste, nutrition, and ease. Bulgur wheat pilaf with vegetables reflected the growing interest in health-conscious eating during the 1970s, but it was also an inexpensive way to make a filling meal. Bulgur was a grain that cooked quickly and absorbed flavors beautifully, making it a great base for sautéed onions, peppers, carrots, and sometimes a handful of herbs. It provided a nutty taste and a hearty texture, yet was much cheaper than meat-based dishes. This pilaf could be served as a main course for a light dinner or as a side dish to stretch more expensive proteins. Health food stores were becoming more common during this decade, and recipes like bulgur pilaf bridged the gap between nutrition and frugality. It could be made in large batches for just a few dollars, making it perfect for budget-minded families. The subtle flavors made it versatile, so leftovers could be repurposed into stuffed peppers or served cold as a salad. For those who wanted to eat well without spending much, bulgur wheat pilaf with vegetables proved that healthy and affordable could absolutely go hand in hand. Apple sausage bread. Pudding married sweet and savory flavors in a way that perfectly captured the experimental spirit of the 1960s kitchen. Day-old bread cubes soaked up a custard of milk and eggs before being mixed with diced apples and small bits of sausage for richness. The dish baked until the top turned golden and the apples released their gentle perfume, filling the home with an inviting scent. By using stale bread and modest amounts of meat, thrifty cooks created a dinner that felt both indulgent and practical. The sweetness of the fruit balanced the smoky sausage, while the custard kept every bite moist. Families often served it with a simple green salad for contrast or a drizzle of maple syrup when they wanted extra sweetness. This recipe highlighted the era's willingness to blend unexpected flavors while keeping costs low. Leftovers reheated beautifully for breakfast the next day, making it a true two-meal wonder that reflected the frugal yet inventive cooking style of mid-century American households. In the era of resourceful cooking, few desserts embodied practicality quite like a fruit cobbler made with canned fruit cocktail, and a biscuit crust. Fellowship fruit cobbler was a mainstay at church potlucks, offering a sweet, bubbling dessert that could feed a crowd with minimal effort. The dish gained traction in the mid-20th century, when canned fruit cocktail became a pantry staple in American homes. A product of clever marketing and food preservation innovation, fruit cocktail offered a colorful mix of diced fruits that made desserts feel festive. Topping it with a simple biscuit crust not only stretched the dish but gave it that golden, flaky finish that felt homemade even when shortcuts were taken. As versatile as it was, the cobbler started losing its shine by the late 20th century. Fresh fruits became more accessible year-round, and modern palates leaned toward desserts with more nuanced flavors and textures. Canned fruit cocktail, once a novelty, began to feel dated. But for those who grew up with it, this cobbler remains a comforting reminder of shared meals, church fellowship halls, and a time when food was about bringing people together, not about impressing them with gourmet flair. If we go back to the 1970s, we're going to discover another really popular dessert, which is rice pudding. Now, far be it from me to disrespect one of the greats. Rice pudding has been around far longer than I have, after all. Still, what's true is sadly still true. The days of glory for rice pudding are definitely far away in the past now. Dude, seriously, back in the 70s, this was all people ate for dessert. How could they not? 1, it was stupid easy to make, and 2, it was really convenient and sweet. All you needed was some cheap rice and milk, and that wasn't really breaking anyone's bank account or putting their budget out of order for the month. What you would get was this perfect dessert supper hybrid that would make perfect sense to have after a big meal or even in the cold winter months. I mean, it was definitely a lot more affordable than ordering a tub of ice cream and a lot healthier too. People have unfortunately started to head in different directions with rice though. These days, if people do eat it, it's mostly with things like chicken tikka masala or rice bowls like katsu curry. Not really any room left in the current climate for a rice-based dessert. Down in Greensboro, North Carolina, Mrs. L.H. Wiggins came up with the hummingbird cake, which Southern Living magazine made famous in '78. This cake's got it all: bananas, pineapple, pecans, cinnamon, and it's topped with a killer cream cheese frosting that ties all those spicy and fruity flavors together. It became a big deal fast, thanks to its unique taste combo and the fact that it was pretty easy to make for any kind of get-together. Over time, though, as dessert trends evolved and global flavors took the spotlight, the hummingbird cake kind of drifted out of the mainstream. The cake is particularly beloved in the South, where it remains a celebrated part of regional culinary traditions. Typically, this cake was stacked up high in layers and generously slathered with frosting, making it a showstopper at parties. Quick chili cheese dip was a warm, spicy appetizer made by combining canned chili with shredded cheese and heating briefly until melted and bubbly. This 10-minute recipe was perfect for parties, game days, or casual get-togethers, delivering a satisfying mix of smoky, cheesy, and spicy flavors. The dip was often served with tortilla chips or crackers, making it easy to share and enjoy in a communal setting. Its simplicity and speed reflected mid-century America's love for convenience foods that could be whipped up without much fuss. Using canned chili ensured the dip was budget-friendly and accessible to many households. Although chili cheese dip remains popular today, the quick homemade versions of the 1960s had a distinctive charm rooted in combining pantry staples into crowd-pleasing dishes. This recipe embodies the era's knack for hearty, flavorful snacks that made entertaining both easy and delicious. Cornbread and pinto beans was a meal deeply rooted in Southern cooking that found its way into frugal kitchens across America during the 1970s. Pinto beans simmered slowly with onions, salt, and maybe just a scrap of ham or bacon for richness were served alongside or spooned over wedges of golden cornbread. The beans provided hearty protein and a savory earthiness, while the cornbread brought sweetness and a crumbly texture that made every bite satisfying. Cooking the beans low and slow allowed them to develop a depth of flavor that paired beautifully with the slightly crisp edges of skillet-baked cornbread. The dish was incredibly inexpensive, feeding a family for pennies and offering leftovers that were just as good reheated the next day. Many households considered this the ultimate comfort meal, perfect for cold evenings when something simple yet filling was needed. Butter melting into a hot slice of cornbread next to a steaming bowl of beans was a humble pleasure that carried generations of tradition. More than just a meal, it was a reminder of resourcefulness, resilience, and the beauty of making something wonderful from basic, affordable ingredients. Buttermilk potato pancakes were a beloved solution for leftover mashed potatoes and a shining example of kitchen thrift in mid-century America. Cold mashed potatoes were combined with tangy buttermilk, a beaten egg, and a bit of flour to create a batter that fried up into golden cakes with crisp edges and fluffy centers. Served hot from the griddle, these pancakes paired beautifully with applesauce, sour cream, or a simple sprinkle of salt and pepper. The recipe offered a new life to yesterday's potatoes, ensuring that nothing in the kitchen went to waste. Families welcomed the comforting aroma that filled the house as the pancakes cooked, making even an ordinary weeknight feel special. They were hearty enough to stand alone as supper, but also worked well alongside a small slice of ham or a bowl of vegetable soup. Easy to make and quick to cook, these pancakes became a regular part of many 1960s dinner rotations and remain a reminder that frugality can be delicious when handled with care and creativity. In the 1970s, dips reigned supreme at church potlucks and family gatherings, and few were as delightfully quirky as dill pickle dip. A creamy blend of sour cream, cream cheese, and finely chopped dill pickles, this tangy appetizer offered bold flavor with minimal effort. Whether served with crackers, chips, or vegetable sticks, it was an unexpected crowd pleaser that stood out among more traditional offerings. This dish emerged during an era when convenience and creativity defined home cooking. Dill pickles had been a staple in American pantries since the early 20th century, and combining them with creamy bases like sour cream or cream cheese was an innovative way to transform basic ingredients into something new. It was practical too, easy to whip up, affordable, and well-suited for large gatherings. So, what happened to this retro favorite? As culinary trends evolved, so did dips. Flashier, more complex recipes featuring exotic ingredients like artichokes and sun-dried tomatoes became the new standard, leaving humble dill pickle dip behind. And for those with pickier palates, the sharp, briny flavor wasn't always a hit. Dill pickle dip evokes nostalgia for an era when recipes were shared on index cards, and the measure of a good potluck dish was how quickly it disappeared. Baked apple slices with cinnamon was a quick, warm dessert popular in 1960s home cooking, involving thinly sliced apples sprinkled with cinnamon and microwaved or quickly baked for a tender, aromatic treat. This recipe required minimal preparation and no complicated baking, making it a favorite for busy families seeking a comforting dessert on short notice. The natural sweetness of the apples was enhanced by the warm spice of cinnamon, creating a cozy flavor perfect for fall or winter evenings. Its quick cook time fit perfectly with the era's growing use of kitchen appliances like microwaves for fast, convenient meals. Often served with a dollop of whipped cream or ice cream, baked apple slices offered a nostalgic reminder of homemade desserts that balanced simplicity with satisfying flavor. Though modern desserts can be more elaborate, this warm apple dish retains its charm as a speedy, wholesome, sweet treat. Chicken and rice baked with cream soup was a casserole that could turn just a couple of chicken pieces into a meal large enough to feed the whole family. Raw rice was combined in a baking dish with cream of mushroom or cream of chicken soup, water, and simple seasonings. The chicken was placed on top, and the whole dish baked until the meat was tender and the rice had absorbed all the creamy, savory flavor. This hands-off cooking method made it a favorite for busy weeknights, while its affordability made it a reliable choice for families keeping a close eye on grocery bills. Using a single casserole dish also meant less cleanup afterward, which only added to its appeal. Leftovers reheated well, making it ideal for packing into lunch containers the next day. Many variations existed, with some cooks adding vegetables like peas or carrots directly into the rice for a complete one-pan dinner. Whether served at the kitchen table on a weeknight or brought to a potluck chicken and rice bake was dependable, filling, and comforting. It embodied the idea that good food didn't need to be complicated, expensive, or labor-intensive to be deeply satisfying. celery and cheese soufflé brought elegance to an inexpensive vegetable that most people considered only a snack or soup ingredient. Finely chopped celery was sautéed with a bit of butter and folded into a fluffy base of beaten eggs and grated cheese before being baked until the top rose and browned. Despite its sophisticated appearance, the ingredients were simple and affordable, making it a popular choice for dinner parties on a budget. The soufflé delivered a gentle crunch from the celery against the airy texture of the eggs, surprising guests who expected something plain. Because the recipe relied on pantry staples like milk, eggs, and a small amount of cheese, it fit perfectly into the frugal cooking philosophy of the time. Home cooks loved that it felt fancy without requiring costly ingredients or specialized equipment. Served with a crisp salad or a slice of toasted bread, this dish turned an ordinary evening into a special occasion and demonstrated how a humble vegetable could take center stage in a memorable meal. The rich, spicy aroma of a well-seasoned casserole was often the highlight of church potlucks, and Jubilee Jambalaya casserole was no exception. This baked version of the Louisiana classic brought together rice, sausage, shrimp, and a bold Creole spice blend. It was hearty, flavorful, and had just the right amount of kick to leave everyone asking for the recipe. Jambalaya, with its roots in Spanish, French, and African culinary traditions, became a staple in Southern cooking centuries ago. Its adaptability made it a natural fit for church gatherings in the 1970s. Stretching expensive ingredients like shrimp with affordable staples like rice was economical, and baking it in a casserole dish made it easy to transport and serve to a crowd. Sausage added depth, and the Creole seasoning brought a vibrancy that elevated the dish beyond your average casserole. So why don't we see it much anymore? As jambalaya purists reclaimed the stovetop tradition, the baked casserole version began to lose its charm. Add in the rise of quicker meal solutions, and the labor-intensive nature of the dish didn't fit modern schedules. You can honestly make the exact same argument, but in a different way, for turkey croquettes. I know you're immediately going to ask what was so special or riveting about croquettes done with turkey instead of the usual chicken. Well, the thing is, it wasn't so much the croquettes as much as it was that this dish showed Americans other avenues for Thanksgiving food. Hey, nothing's replacing the big fat center stage turkey. But people thought that you could also add to the overall vibe and atmosphere of Thanksgiving if you doubled down on the inclination for turkey. They were also a wonderful way to repurpose any sort of leftover turkey, and in an era that was constantly heading towards lighter foods, smaller plates, and overall more greens, they didn't exactly know how to start using their turkey in different ways. Croquettes, on the other hand, were perfect for a few more reasons than just being a different kind of way of using your turkey. You couldn't spend 15-20 minutes making and assembling a turkey sandwich, especially when streaming services weren't a thing. If you missed your TV back then, you could honestly just consider it gone. Turkey croquettes were easy to make ahead of time, and they were a fun way of handling a lot of meat that would otherwise just go to waste sitting in your fridge. Snowball cakes are all about that winter vibe, with their fluffy marshmallow filling and a coating of shredded coconut that looks just like snow. Inside, there's a chocolate sponge cake that keeps everything rich and interesting. These treats got their name from their cool, snowball-like appearance, making them a hit during the holiday season. They used to be all over the place as pre-packaged snacks from brands like Hostess, known for their fun and distinctive look. But as people started choosing more natural and less processed options, snowball cakes kind of faded out. They were usually wrapped up all neat, making them easy to grab and go. Honey mustard ham wraps were a speedy, flavorful handheld snack consisting of thin slices of ham rolled with honey mustard and fresh lettuce, perfect for lunch or light bites. This 10-minute recipe combined the sweet tang of honey mustard with savory ham and crisp greens, offering a balanced taste that was both satisfying and easy to prepare. Popular during the 1960s when convenience and flavor were equally important, these wraps could be assembled quickly with minimal ingredients and no cooking required. They were perfect for packed lunches, casual gatherings, or buffet tables. This recipe reflected the era's increasing interest in portable, ready-to-eat foods that did not sacrifice taste. While modern wraps have evolved with a variety of fillings and sauces, Honey mustard ham wraps remain a classic example of quick and delicious mid-century recipes designed to please busy families and entertaining hosts alike. Homemade pizza with canned toppings became a budget-friendly way to enjoy a special meal at home without paying for expensive pizzeria pies. Families would make a simple crust from flour, yeast, and water, then spread on tomato sauce from a can and layer affordable toppings like canned mushrooms, olives, or pineapple. Shredded cheese, often a blend of mozzarella and cheddar, was sprinkled generously or sparingly depending on the budget. The beauty of homemade pizza was that it could be adapted to whatever was on hand, from sliced hot dogs to leftover vegetables, making it as thrifty or as loaded as needed. Baking it in the oven filled the kitchen with a warm, savory aroma that made everyone eager to gather at the table. Kids loved helping assemble the toppings, making it as much an activity as a meal. By using canned ingredients, there was no worry about food spoiling before it could be used, and sales on pantry staples often meant pizza night cost only a fraction of takeout prices. It was an easy way to turn an ordinary evening into something festive, proving that delicious comfort food could be made from shelf-stable ingredients with just a little creativity and care. Pea and egg salad plate was a thrifty supper that turned humble staples into a refreshing main dish for a warm evening. Canned peas were drained and chilled before being folded with chopped hard-boiled eggs, diced celery, and a splash of mild vinegar dressing. A pinch of dry mustard or a spoon of mayonnaise added just enough richness to bind everything together while still keeping the cost low. Served on crisp lettuce leaves or alongside sliced tomatoes from the backyard garden, it provided protein and texture without any need for meat. Home cooks loved how quickly it came together using pantry items that were inexpensive and easy to find year-round. Children enjoyed the gentle sweetness of the peas, while adults appreciated the subtle tang from the dressing. This simple combination was light enough for summertime, but filling enough to carry a family through a busy evening, reflecting the practical yet creative spirit of mid-century kitchens, where canned vegetables and eggs formed the backbone of many dependable weeknight meals. During an era when convenience reigned supreme, few desserts captured the hearts of church potlucks quite like a no-bake peanut butter pie. With its creamy, sweet peanut butter filling nestled inside a graham cracker crust, pious peanut butter pie became a symbol of simplicity and indulgence. It was rich, satisfying, and best of all, didn't require turning on the oven, a blessing for busy cooks and warm kitchens. The origins of this dessert lie in the mid-century love affair with peanut butter, which soared in popularity thanks to its affordability and versatility. Pairing it with sweetened condensed milk and whipped topping, staples of the time, turned humble ingredients into a decadent treat. The graham cracker crust, first popularized in the 1930s, added a buttery crunch that balanced the pie's smooth filling. It was practical, easy to assemble, and required little more than a refrigerator to set. Yet, as dessert trends evolved, this pie began to fade from favor. The rise of more elaborate, multi-layered confections and a push toward healthier eating made its rich, calorie-dense filling seem out of step with modern tastes. Shredded pork tacos, on the other hand, are still something that I can confidently say has kept up with the local scene. Do you know how many gaming sessions, yap-offs, and movie nights have been spent preparing, assembling, and binging no tacos? I mean, it evolved from a street food to a party snack to a regular daily part of our lives. You just can't separate America from its tacos anymore, but does that mean there's equity? Is the socio-political state of the taco world a hierarchy where others sit at the top and some get to be stuck at the bottom ladder, forever lost to time? Or is it a spectrum where we all happily enjoy every variation of taco ever and just decide where we want to go on the spectrum to get what we enjoy? Unfortunately, the truth is a mix of both. Now see, lots of tacos have come and gone. That's no secret. Some had a lot more pull than others, and some were a lot more palatable to mass tastes. Shredded pork tacos were something that were really just a showstopper for the taco scene in general. Before this, you had your usual assortment of chicken bites, pinto beans, sour cream, and some veggies. But no one was really delving into pork territory. Did it last all the way to the big 2025, though? I can't say it did. I just don't see enough shredded pork tacos anymore out in the street to count them as being popular, especially in this day and age where the meaning of the words trendy and popular continue to evolve every day thanks to social media. The Watergate cake popping up in the 70s was all about riding the wave of the famous scandal it's named after. This pistachio-flavored cake, made with pistachio pudding mix, sports a funky green color and a nutty taste, lightened up with some club soda. It's usually decked out with a frosting that's also got pudding in it and sprinkled with pecans, making for a pretty unique look and texture. The whole novelty of its theme and the connection to a wild moment in politics helped make it a hit. But as people started digging more natural and less artificially flavored sweets, its star faded. Watergate cake was typically a sheet cake, super easy to slice up for casual gatherings. Quick pickled cucumber relish was a staple condiment of mid-century American kitchens, cherished for its bright tang and crisp texture. This simple recipe involved thinly slicing fresh cucumbers and marinating them in a mixture of vinegar, sugar, and salt, sometimes enhanced with spices like mustard seed or dill. The relish was ready to serve after a brief soaking, offering a refreshing burst of flavor that complemented sandwiches, grilled meats, and cold cuts. Its tangy sweetness and crunchy bite made it an ideal accompaniment to heavier dishes, balancing richness with acidity. Frittata with leftover vegetables was a clever way to avoid waste while putting a wholesome, filling meal on the table. Eggs were whisked together and poured over a skillet of sautéed vegetables, anything from last night's roasted potatoes to stray pieces of zucchini, spinach, or peppers. The mixture cooked gently until just set, sometimes finished under the broiler to give the top a light golden crust. Cheese, herbs, or even small amounts of meat could be added if available, but the heart of the dish came from making the most of what was already in the kitchen. Frittatas were quick to prepare, making them perfect for breakfast, lunch, or dinner, and they could be served hot or at room temperature. Their adaptability meant that no two were ever quite the same, yet they always delivered satisfying flavor and nourishment. In an era when thrift and efficiency were valued in the kitchen, frittatas showed how resourcefulness could lead to dishes that felt fresh and intentional rather than thrown together. Paired with bread or a simple salad, they were proof that a handful of odds and ends could be transformed into something delicious in under 30 minutes. Caraway cabbage stew showcased the old-world flavors that many American families rediscovered in the 1960s while keeping costs firmly under control. Shredded cabbage simmered slowly with potatoes, onions, and a sprinkling of aromatic caraway seeds until the vegetables softened and the broth turned fragrant. The caraway lent a gentle licorice note that lifted the humble ingredients, creating a stew that was both comforting and unexpectedly complex. A small amount of butter or oil added richness without driving up the price, and the dish required only a handful of pantry staples to feed a crowd. Many families with Central or Eastern European heritage embraced this recipe as a taste of tradition, while others simply enjoyed its hearty simplicity. Served with rye bread or a slice of cornbread, caraway cabbage stew delivered warmth and satisfaction during cold months. It remains a reminder of how immigrant flavors blended seamlessly into American home cooking, offering deep taste and nourishment from ingredients that were inexpensive, widely available, and easy to store through the winter. Few aromas could fill a church kitchen quite like freshly baked dinner rolls. Soft, buttery, and served warm, these rolls were a symbol of homemade care and hospitality. Devotion dinner rolls were the kind of recipe passed down through families, often scrawled on flour-dusted recipe cards and perfected over decades of Sunday suppers and holiday feasts. Homemade bread has deep roots in American culinary history, long before mass-produced loaves became the norm. In the 1970s, scratch-made dinner rolls still held their place on church tables, reflecting a time when baking bread was both an act of love and a nod to tradition. With simple, affordable ingredients like flour, yeast, and butter, these rolls were versatile enough to accompany anything from soups to pot roast, making them a must-have at potlucks. So why are they now more a memory than a staple? Blame the rise of convenience foods. The introduction of prepackaged rolls and frozen bread dough offered busy cooks a shortcut that didn't involve kneading or proofing. And while nothing quite compares to the taste of homemade, time-consuming recipes often took a backseat as modern life sped up. Speaking of stir-fries, one of the more common ones that wasn't inspired by Asian culture was actually cabbage and sausage stir-fry. And this is definitely something you'd only see in the 70s. First of all, let's be honest. How many Gen Z or Gen Alpha kids do you know that would genuinely ask for cabbage stir-fry for lunch? Uber Eats has the game on deadlock, and that means that people really don't eat stuff like this anymore. Back in the 20th century, though, it was possible for something like cabbage to rise to stardom and even stay at the top and maintain a chokehold on people's diets. Why? Well, that's partially due to the 3-decade-long period filled with 3 history-defining disasters in the 20th century, namely the Depression, the Dust Bowl, and the World Wars. Quite a trifecta, isn't it? Still, that's when cabbage got so popular in America as a cheap and affordable nutrition-filled option that people started to eat it almost non-stop. Adding bits of leftover sausage to the stir-fry gave it a neat little protein element, and that cemented the dish as a rustic 20th century classic for when the going gets noticeably tougher than usual. Cold asparagus and mayonnaise salad was a simple and refreshing side dish featuring tender asparagus spears tossed in a light mayonnaise-based dressing and chilled before serving. Popular in 1960s America, this salad was often served at summer picnics, dinner parties, and holiday meals as a cool counterpoint to richer entrees. The mayonnaise dressing, sometimes flavored with lemon juice or herbs, added creaminess that complemented the crisp yet delicate texture of fresh asparagus. This salad was prized for its ease of preparation and elegant presentation, often arranged on lettuce leaves or decorative plates. It fit perfectly into the 10-minute recipe trend, providing a fresh vegetable option that required minimal cooking or fuss. Although tastes have shifted toward vinaigrette-based dressings, cold asparagus salad remains a nostalgic favorite for those who appreciate classic, creamy vegetable sides that evoke the charm of 1960s dining. Baked spaghetti pie was an inventive way to transform leftover pasta into a dish that could be sliced and served like a casserole. Cooked spaghetti was mixed with beaten eggs and cheese to form a firm base, then layered with marinara sauce, more cheese, and sometimes bits of meat or vegetables before being baked until set. Once cooled slightly, it could be cut into wedges, each slice holding together neatly for easy serving. This made it a great option for packed lunches or reheating later in the week. The baking process gave the pasta a slightly crisp exterior while keeping the inside tender and flavorful. Baked spaghetti pie allowed families to repurpose leftovers creatively, ensuring nothing went to waste. It also offered a fun twist on a familiar meal, bringing novelty without extra expense. For budget-conscious cooks, it was a way to make a small amount of sauce and cheese stretch across multiple servings. Paired with a side salad or bread, baked spaghetti pie was satisfying, economical, and just different enough to feel like a treat compared to the usual plate of pasta, proving that leftovers could be just as exciting as a freshly made dish. Peanut butter and celery rice surprised many families with its simple combination of protein and crunch, while staying true to the spirit of economical cooking. Hot-cooked rice was stirred with a generous spoon of peanut butter until it melted into a creamy coating, then finished with finely diced celery for freshness and texture. The nutty flavor provided satisfying richness without the need for meat, while the celery added a pleasant bite that kept each spoonful lively. Children enjoyed the mild sweetness of the peanuts, and parents appreciated how the dish delivered both carbohydrates and protein at a very low cost. It could be served as a warm side dish or as a light vegetarian main course alongside a crisp salad. This inventive recipe reflected the era's openness to global influences and practical experimentation, proving that even unexpected pairings could become a family favorite. Peanut butter and celery rice stands as a delicious reminder of how 1960s cooks stretched their budgets while creating meals that were nourishing, flavorful, and delightfully different. In the heyday of retro desserts, Charity Cherry Salad was a shining star at potlucks and family gatherings. This chilled dish combined bright maraschino cherries, velvety cream cheese, and fluffy whipped topping, creating a dessert that was as vibrant as it was indulgent. Served in elegant glass bowls or set in decorative molds, it added a touch of flair to any church supper table. The popularity of dishes like this can be traced back to the mid-20th century, when refrigeration revolutionized home cooking. Desserts that could be prepared ahead of time and served cold became the ultimate convenience for busy homemakers. Maraschino cherries, first commercialized in the early 1900s, were a pantry favorite thanks to their long shelf life and striking red color. Blending them with cream cheese and whipped topping was a clever way to create a dessert that felt rich but remained affordable. Despite its charm, Charity cherry salad fell out of fashion as modern palates shifted away from overly sweet processed ingredients. The rise of fresh fruit salads and lighter desserts in the late 20th century further sealed its fate. Neapolitan ice cream sandwiches throw together classic flavors: vanilla, chocolate, and strawberry ice cream, squeezed between cookies or wafers. This treat took the old-school Neapolitan ice cream idea from Italy, where mixing up flavors was the thing, and turned it into a fun, easy-to-eat dessert. Having all those flavors in one bite made it super popular at family get-togethers and community events. It was a blast of color and taste that just felt like a party. But as the dessert scene got crowded with new, exotic flavors and gourmet options, these ice cream sandwiches didn't stand out as much. They were simple but effective, with clear layers of ice cream showing through the cookies, making every bite a mix of creamy and crunchy. Cucumber and radish salad with dill was a crisp, refreshing cold salad that became a favorite in the 1960s for its vibrant flavors and ease of preparation. Thinly sliced cucumbers and radishes were tossed with fresh dill and dressed lightly with vinegar, sugar, and sometimes a touch of sour cream or mayonnaise. This combination created a balance of cool, peppery, and herbal notes that complemented summer meals and barbecues beautifully. Served chilled, this salad was a quick 10-minute recipe that added brightness and texture to the dinner table, providing a healthy vegetable side with minimal fuss. Its simplicity and fresh ingredients reflected the era's growing appreciation for quick, garden-fresh dishes that could be prepared without lengthy cooking. Though less common today, cucumber and radish salad with dill remains a nostalgic and tasty example of mid-century cold vegetable salads designed to refresh and complement heartier foods. Eggplant Parmesan casserole brought a touch of Italian-inspired comfort to the frugal dinner table, making use of the abundant and inexpensive eggplant that was widely available in grocery stores and gardens. Slices of eggplant were dredged in breadcrumbs, sometimes homemade from stale bread, and baked or pan-fried until tender. These slices were layered in a casserole dish with marinara sauce and cheese, then baked until bubbly and golden on top. The eggplant's mild, creamy texture absorbed the flavors of the sauce, giving the dish richness without the need for costly meat. For those watching their spending, this casserole was a way to create a hearty, crowd-worthy meal that felt indulgent yet cost very little. Leftovers reheated beautifully, making it perfect for meal planning. Some home cooks added extra vegetables like spinach or zucchini between the layers, stretching the recipe even further. Paired with a side of pasta or crusty bread, eggplant Parmesan casserole was both filling and satisfying, offering all the comfort of a traditional Italian dinner at a fraction of the price. It stood as proof that vegetables could take center stage in a main dish without sacrificing flavor, heartiness, or the joy of gathering around the table. Sweet and sour cabbage bake turned a single, inexpensive vegetable into a lively main dish that brightened even the plainest table. Shredded cabbage was braised slowly with a mixture of vinegar, sugar, and a splash of tomato juice until the leaves softened and soaked up the tangy glaze. A small spoon of butter added just enough richness while keeping the budget firmly in check. The gentle balance of sweet and sour flavors made this casserole appealing to children and adults alike, offering a welcome contrast to heavier meat-based meals. Home cooks valued how it could be made ahead and reheated without losing its texture, making it perfect for church suppers or busy weeknights. Many families served it with thick slices of bread to soak up the flavorful juices, creating a meal that was both frugal and satisfying. This dish demonstrated how careful seasoning and slow cooking could elevate humble cabbage into something memorable, reflecting the creativity of 1960s kitchens where every ingredient was stretched and celebrated for its potential. The cheese log, simple yet sophisticated, was a centerpiece of 1970s entertaining, and the Chapel cheese log was a classic example of its enduring charm. A blend of cream cheese, shredded cheddar, and seasonings rolled in crushed nuts, this dish was as much about presentation as it was about flavor. Paired with crackers, it graced countless church potlucks and holiday spreads, offering a bite-sized burst of creamy, nutty indulgence. The origins of the cheese log can be traced back to mid-century culinary trends, when convenience and elegance often went hand in hand. Cheese logs became a staple in the 1960s and 70s, popularized by their ease of preparation and adaptability. Home cooks could mix in herbs, spices, or even dried fruit to suit their tastes, making it versatile for various occasions. Its cylindrical shape and nutty coating also made it easy to transport, a key factor for church gatherings. So why did this once celebrated appetizer fall out of favor? As the 1980s ushered in fancier hors d'oeuvres and international cuisines, the humble cheese log started to feel a bit dated. Prepackaged cheese spreads also gained popularity, offering a more convenient alternative. Pasta primavera was something that was put into the American culinary scene thanks to one chef, Sirio Maccioni of Le Cirque, which is a restaurant in New York City, and a pretty recognizable one. That name may not mean much to you right now, but this was the brain that made pasta primavera a symbol of sophisticated upscale dining during the 1970s. The intent was to capitalize on the growing national interest in lighter food and foreign cuisines, and one of the first places Americans thought to look for inspiration was Europe, specifically French and Italian cuisines. Of course, the Italian immigrants who still vividly remembered their country's food and delicacies couldn't wait to jump on the opportunity. I mean, if you heard a title fight calling your name and you knew the opposition was a punk, wouldn't you go? And who was the opposition here? Beef jerky? The same meatloaf you've been having since the 50s? I think they all felt differently. It was something that even got too many cookbooks too. Nowadays, it's not a trendy restaurant dish, and you'd be hard-pressed to find places that were selling it as their main attraction. But it did still turn a lot of heads. Magic cookie bars got their start from an Eagle brand recipe in the 60s and caught everyone's attention with their awesome taste and texture game. Imagine a buttery graham cracker crust layered with sweetened condensed milk, then piled with chocolate chips, butterscotch chips, coconut, and nuts. It's a chewy, gooey slice of heaven. They were a cinch to whip up and didn't need much time in the oven, which made them a hit for busy bakers and holiday times. Interestingly, they also go by the name Hello Dolly bars in some regions, adding a bit of theatrical flair to their homey appeal. But as years passed and people started leaning towards fresher and less processed goodies, the craze for these bars kind of fizzled. Usually they were cut into squares or bars, rocking a no-fuss, rustic vibe that made them super easy to serve and enjoy. The mix of sweetened condensed milk with coconut and chocolate created a taste that screamed 1970s home baking. Quick fruit and nut yogurt. Parfait was a quick and nutritious treat beloved in the 1960s for its simple assembly and delightful flavors. This parfait layered creamy yogurt with sweet canned fruits such as peaches or pineapple, along with a generous sprinkling of chopped nuts like walnuts or pecans. The combination provided a pleasing contrast between the smooth, tangy yogurt, the juicy fruit, and the crunchy texture of the nuts. Perfect for breakfast, a snack, or a light dessert, this recipe required minimal preparation time, fitting the era's demand for fast, wholesome meals. The canned fruit added a convenient sweetness that balanced the natural tartness of yogurt, while the nuts contributed protein and richness. This parfait was often served in clear glasses to showcase its colorful layers, making it visually appealing as well as tasty. Its popularity reflected the growing awareness of health and nutrition during the decade, along with a desire for fresh, easy-to-make dishes. While today's parfaits may include granola or fresh fruit, the classic 1960s fruit and nut yogurt parfait remains a nostalgic favorite, combining pantry staples into a satisfying and wholesome treat that anyone could whip up in moments. Split pea soup with ham bone was a thrifty cook's dream, transforming simple dried peas and leftover ham trimmings into a thick, flavorful meal. The ham bone, often saved from a previous roast, was simmered slowly with split peas, onions, carrots, and celery until the peas broke down into a velvety texture. The marrow and scraps from the bone infused the soup with a deep, smoky richness without requiring additional meat. This was a dish that could simmer on the stove all afternoon, filling the home with a comforting aroma that promised warmth and satisfaction. Inexpensive, nourishing, and filling, split pea soup could feed a family for pennies a bowl. It was perfect for cold winter days when something hearty was needed to chase away the chill. Leftovers thickened overnight, making the next day's serving even richer in flavor. Some cooks served it with a slice of buttered bread or cornbread for dipping, completing the meal without adding much cost. In an era when resourcefulness in the kitchen was essential, split pea soup with ham bone was a shining example of how to make the most of every scrap while delivering deep, soulful comfort in every spoonful. Vegetable curry stew introduced a mild touch of international flavor to American kitchens while staying firmly in the realm of affordable comfort food. Potatoes, carrots, onions, and canned chickpeas simmered slowly with a gentle dusting of curry powder, filling the house with a warm, spiced aroma that felt both new and familiar. The recipe was flexible enough to accept any vegetables on hand, making it ideal for gardeners or thrifty shoppers. During the 1960s, when interest in global flavors was growing, this stew offered a budget-friendly way to explore something different without leaving the home kitchen. Served with plain rice or a slice of crusty bread, it delivered a complete protein and plenty of satisfying texture. Families discovered that the spices brightened otherwise simple ingredients, proving that excitement at the dinner table did not require expensive meats or specialty imports. Vegetable curry stew stands as a delicious example of how mid-century cooks embraced fresh ideas while still practicing the frugality and adaptability that defined their daily meals. Baked ziti is still, on the other hand, something I would say does get a lot of action, even today though. Sometimes these American trends confuse the life out of me. Like, I just don't get why baked ziti would outpace shredded pork tacos, you know? It doesn't make sense. It's like saying you'd expect, I don't know, U2 to outlast Coldplay. I mean, sure, maybe I'm on the younger side when I say this, but U2 had some hits. Coldplay, though? That's kind of my outlook on the whole situation. If you think baked ziti deserves to be in the 2020s with us more than some other items on the list, feel free to disagree, and actually, disagree pretty loudly in the comments. Back to baked ziti, though. So here you have your usual pasta cheese affair, which seems to be a combination that, across all ages, Americans can't seem to get enough of. It's cheap, it's economical, and it's definitely healthy. Still, it's bland, a bit uninspiring, and, well, just overdone. This is also why you don't see most people making baked zitis outside of 30-something suburban moms. Hot dog roll-ups were a favorite kid-friendly snack throughout the 1960s, consisting of hot dogs wrapped in crescent roll dough and baked to golden perfection. This quick recipe brought together the comforting familiarity of hot dogs with the flaky texture of crescent rolls, creating an easy-to-handle finger food loved at parties and lunchboxes alike. The rolls were assembled in minutes, making them a practical solution for parents needing fast and tasty snacks. The appeal of this dish lay not just in its flavor but also in its fun presentation, as the wrapped hot dogs resembled miniature pastries that children eagerly devoured. It captured the era's spirit of convenience and family-focused cooking, combining processed foods in clever ways to satisfy busy schedules. Though homemade versions have become less common with the rise of commercial snack foods, hot dog roll-ups remain a nostalgic emblem of quick and simple 1960s comfort food. Cabbage roll casserole took all the flavors of traditional stuffed cabbage and turned them into an easy, budget-friendly bake. Instead of painstakingly rolling each cabbage leaf around the filling, chopped cabbage was layered with a seasoned mixture of rice, tomato sauce, and ground beef in a large casserole dish. This shortcut saved precious time, while still delivering the same comforting blend of sweet cabbage and tangy tomato that people loved. It was an affordable way to feed a family because the rice and cabbage made up most of the volume, allowing a small amount of meat to go a long way. As the casserole baked slowly, the flavors melded beautifully, and the cabbage softened until it was tender and sweet. Leftovers were just as good, sometimes even better the next day, making it a smart choice for tight weekly meal plans. Every family had its own spin, often seasoning with paprika, garlic, or fresh herbs from the garden. In many homes, this dish represented a perfect marriage of tradition and practicality, proving that with creativity, even the simplest pantry ingredients could deliver a meal that wrapped you in comfort after a long day. Bologna and apple skillet combined two humble ingredients in a sweet and savory partnership that captured the playful side of 1960s home cooking. Slices of bologna were quickly browned in a cast iron skillet, then tossed with diced apples and a small knob of butter until the fruit softened and released its natural juices. The salty meat and gently sweet apples created a flavor that felt surprisingly rich despite the low cost. This dish made excellent use of ingredients that were almost always on hand: inexpensive deli meat and seasonal fruit. Families appreciated its speed on busy weeknights, while children were drawn to the fun contrast of tastes and textures. Served over toast or alongside mashed potatoes, it became a complete meal that proved resourceful cooks could create memorable flavors from the simplest pantry staples. Decades later, it remains a reminder of how imaginative combinations could turn everyday items into an unexpected treat without straining a modest household budget or requiring elaborate preparation. During the 1970s, baked chicken dishes were the unsung heroes of potluck dinners, and this one, with its honey, pecan, and mustard glaze, struck the perfect balance between sweet and savory. Holy honey pecan chicken brought a touch of sophistication to the church potluck table, elevating humble chicken into a dish that felt both hearty and refined. The roots of this recipe trace back to Southern cooking traditions, where pecans were abundant and honey was a natural sweetener long before sugar became widespread. By the mid-20th century, recipes like this embraced the availability of affordable chicken cuts and pantry staples like mustard and honey. Chicken was cheap, easy to prepare, and universally loved, while the glaze was a clever way to turn basic ingredients into something special. So, why don't we see it much today? Part of the answer lies in the rise of boneless, skinless chicken breasts and pre-marinated options, which eliminated the need for labor-intensive glazes. Add to that the growing preference for lighter, grilled dishes, and this once popular recipe found itself fading into culinary obscurity. Egg group soup is still something you could say is a popular wintertime snack for a lot of people and definitely a comfort food for a niche crowd. But it's not something I would say is in its prime anymore. There were and still are an incredible amount of fans of Chinese cuisine. If anything, that number has only continued to increase with no signs of stopping. I mean, geez, these days we even prefer their TikTok to our own, right? Anyway, that kind of stuff is exactly why egg drop soup got a bit left behind, though. You keep getting exposed to a culture over time, and you start to see more and more of it. More traditional recipes, foods, street foods, heritage dishes, all that. You start to leave behind the popular staples that you once went to because you didn't know anything else. It's unfortunately the same deal for things like chow mein and Szechuan chicken, as good as they are. And don't get me wrong, there's a sizable audience for egg drop soup, because who can beat something that's simple and effective? I'm just saying that the audience used to be more regular and bigger. Frozen fruit and yogurt pops were a cool and healthy treat made by blending canned fruit with yogurt and freezing the mixture into popsicles, offering a refreshing dessert in minutes. This 10-minute recipe was popular in the 1960s as an easy way to use pantry staples to create homemade frozen treats that appealed to both children and adults. The combination of creamy yogurt and sweet fruit created a balanced flavor that was light and satisfying on hot days. These pops were typically made by mixing, pouring into molds, and freezing, requiring minimal effort while providing a wholesome alternative to commercial ice creams. This recipe exemplified the era's growing emphasis on convenience, nutrition, and family-friendly cooking. Though frozen desserts have become more varied and elaborate, Frozen fruit and yogurt pops remain a nostalgic reminder of simple, wholesome pleasures from mid-century American kitchens. Ground beef and potato hash was a skillet meal that stretched a small amount of meat into something hearty enough to satisfy hungry stomachs after a long day. Diced potatoes were fried until golden and crisp, then combined with browned ground beef, onions, and simple seasonings. The result was a dish with plenty of texture, crispy edges on the potatoes, tender bits of beef, and the sweetness of caramelized onions tying it all together. This meal was endlessly adaptable, with some families adding vegetables like bell peppers or corn for extra flavor and bulk. It was a natural choice for breakfast, lunch, or dinner, and it could be made in large batches without much extra effort. In frugal kitchens, hash was a way to make every ingredient count, turning basic staples into something satisfying and filling. It was also quick to prepare, making it a weeknight favorite. Served on its own or topped with a fried egg, ground beef and potato hash was the kind of no-frills comfort food that felt like a reward at the end of the day. It proved that even the simplest combinations could be deeply flavorful and endlessly comforting. Parsley noodle pudding brought a delicate herbal note to the classic baked noodle dish, turning inexpensive staples into a fragrant supper centerpiece. Wide egg noodles were cooked until just tender, then mixed with milk, eggs, a little butter, and a generous handful of freshly chopped parsley before baking to a golden finish. The custard base held everything together while the parsley added color and a bright, garden-fresh taste that lifted the entire dish. This pudding was equally welcome as a vegetarian main course or as a side alongside roasted vegetables. Because the ingredients were inexpensive and easy to keep on hand, it fit perfectly into the thrifty mindset of 1960s households. Home cooks appreciated how it could be assembled in advance and baked just before serving, freeing time for family or guests. Children enjoyed the mild flavor and silky texture, while adults admired its simple elegance. Parsley noodle pudding remains a quiet reminder that with a little imagination, even the most modest pantry can produce a meal worth remembering. Testimony turnip greens, slow-cooked with ham hocks and a splash of vinegar, embodied the resourcefulness of generations who turned humble ingredients into dishes full of flavor and meaning. At church potlucks and family tables, this dish was a testament to heritage and community. Turnip greens have deep roots in Southern cooking, where they were valued for their nutritional benefits and availability. Paired with ham hocks, a cost-effective way to infuse smoky, savory richness, this dish became a staple of rural kitchens. The addition of vinegar not only brightened the greens but also reflected an age-old culinary practice of balancing rich and tangy flavors. For many families, it was a versatile dish, often served alongside cornbread to soak up the pot liquor, the nutrient-rich broth left behind. But as tastes changed and cooking habits evolved, slow-cooked greens began to fall out of favor. The rise of faster, more convenient vegetable preparations made the hours-long simmering process feel outdated. Moreover, the strong, earthy flavor of turnip greens didn't appeal to everyone, especially younger generations. Still, for those who grew up with them, turnip greens are a reminder of a time when cooking wasn't rushed, and meals were an opportunity to savor both food and fellowship. Something else that was also insanely popular and stopped being that way was oven-baked chicken drumsticks. This is also something I will entirely, and many food analysts and critics will agree with me on, fast food. See, why would you ever bother with the laborious process of marinating drumsticks, gathering the ingredients, making up a spice blend, making a sauce, making a dip, cutting up fries, and going to the store for some affordable soda when Kentucky Fried Chicken has a deal out for a 3-piece combo for $10? Is $10 outrageous for a 3-piece combo? Most assuredly. Is KFC still undoubtedly delicious, convenient, and deeply ingrained into the American cultural zeitgeist? Absolutely. It's not even that there aren't any benefits to making this stuff at home. There are an insane amount of arguments and good reasons as to why it is healthier, smarter, and more economical to just handle your cravings at home with an air fryer, some olive oil or vegetable oil, and drumsticks you know you can trust. People don't work like that, though. And unfortunately, the saying that humans are creatures of habit couldn't be any more true. People are far too hooked on fast food chains for their supply of fried food, especially classic things like drumsticks. And that just means that ovens don't see a lot of use outside of TikTok trends and one-off videos that content creators might do. Crispy fried green tomato slices were a beloved Southern-inspired snack and side dish popularized in the 1960s, made by thinly slicing unripe green tomatoes, breading, and pan-frying them until golden and crisp. This 10-minute recipe was cherished for its tangy, slightly tart flavor and crunchy texture, providing a satisfying contrast to heavier dishes. The tomatoes were often dipped in a simple batter or breading mixture seasoned with salt and pepper, then fried in hot oil for a quick, flavorful treat. Crispy fried green tomatoes were commonly served at family dinners, potlucks, and restaurants, representing Southern comfort food that gained national popularity during the decade. Their quick preparation and bold taste made them a favorite for those seeking easy yet delicious recipes. Though the dish has become a regional classic, it stands as a nostalgic reminder of the inventive, approachable cooking styles of the 1960s. Zucchini fritters with sour cream became a summertime favorite in the 1970s, especially when backyard gardens started producing more zucchini than families could possibly eat. Grated zucchini was mixed with a little flour, egg, and seasoning, then fried until golden and crisp on the outside while tender inside. They were inexpensive to make, and even kids who claimed not to like vegetables would eat them happily when served with a cool dollop of sour cream. The rise of home gardening during this time meant that zucchini was almost always on hand, and this recipe was a clever way to use up the surplus without wasting food. Fritters were light enough for a summer lunch, but could also be served alongside meat or soup for a more filling dinner. The crispy edges and soft center gave them a texture that felt indulgent, even though they were made from humble ingredients. Sour cream added a tangy richness that balanced the mild zucchini flavor perfectly. Families loved them for their simplicity and versatility, often serving them hot from the skillet to the table. Raisin rice. Pilaf proved that a meatless dinner could still feel special and satisfying when handled with care. White rice was simmered slowly with a bit of butter until each grain was tender, then tossed with plump raisins that had been soaked in warm water to bring out their natural sweetness. A pinch of cinnamon or nutmeg added gentle spice, turning plain rice into a fragrant dish that filled the kitchen with an inviting aroma. Many 1960s households served this pilaf as a main course on nights when meat was too expensive, or saved it for church suppers where a simple vegetarian option was welcome. It paired beautifully with a crisp green salad or a side of baked apples, creating a balanced meal from inexpensive ingredients. Leftovers reheated well for breakfast with a drizzle of honey or a splash of milk. The dish showed how a few pantry staples could stretch a grocery budget and proved that even the simplest ingredients could deliver comfort and a hint of elegance at the dinner table. In the world of comfort desserts, few could match the magic of a self-saucing, virtuous vanilla pudding cake. This clever dish baked into two distinct layers, a fluffy vanilla cake on top and a rich, warm pudding underneath. Simple, satisfying, and slightly mysterious, it was a favorite at church potlucks where ingenuity and indulgence often went hand in hand. Self-saucing cakes date back to the early 20th century, gaining popularity during the Great Depression when frugality was key. By the 1970s, the vanilla variation became a staple of community cookbooks, praised for turning pantry basics, flour, sugar, milk, and eggs, into something that felt both luxurious and homemade. Its practicality was unbeatable. Minimal ingredients, no frosting needed, and a built-in sauce that made it feel like two desserts in one. But as dessert trends grew more elaborate in the 1980s and beyond, this humble cake struggled to keep up. The rise of rich layer cakes, cheesecakes, and decorative confections made its understated appearance less appealing. Additionally, the convenience of boxed cake mixes overshadowed the charm of from-scratch baking. So, that vegetarian chili I was just talking about. Yes, it was its own kind of thing, and yes, it flopped kind of how you would expect it to. I won't say it flopped entirely, since it really did find a place for itself, unlike Spam fried rice and a niche fan base to call family. Unfortunately, that niche fan base, and the overall population of the country have both moved on from chili in general. In the South, if you described vegetarian chili to anyone, they'd probably giggle or tell you to eat something real. In urban places like upscale neighborhoods in New York, it was probably a fairly decent and affordable snack. I mean, it's not like this would really take a lot of effort from anyone's side. All you had to do was dice up some cabbage, lettuce, onions, and peas and throw it in that chili, get a good mixing going, and you had a bowl ready. Unfortunately, as far as tastes and preferences go, both basic vegetables and chili have started to become used in many different ways. If people crave spice these days, they just go to an Indian restaurant. They don't waste their time with a chili bowl like people used to. Cold radish and butter sandwiches were a charming garden-inspired treat popular in the 1960s, combining thinly sliced fresh radishes layered generously with butter on soft white bread. This straightforward recipe required little more than fresh radishes, softened butter, and bread, making it a quick snack or light lunch ideal for warmer months when garden vegetables were plentiful. The sharp, peppery bite of radishes contrasted beautifully with the rich creaminess of butter, offering a simple yet satisfying flavor experience. This sandwich celebrated fresh, seasonal ingredients and the pleasure of uncomplicated food. It was a common choice for tea parties, picnics, or afternoon snacks, embodying the era's appreciation for easy-to-make dishes that did not sacrifice taste or texture. Though less common today, cold radish and butter sandwiches evoke a nostalgic sense of homegrown simplicity and the joy of seasonal eating in mid-century America. Sloppy Joes on homemade buns were one of the easiest and cheapest ways to stretch a pound of ground beef in the 1970s, and they brought a sweet, savory aroma that could fill the whole house. The meat was browned with onions, then simmered with ketchup, mustard, and a touch of brown sugar until it became a thick, flavorful filling. Serving it on homemade buns made it even more frugal, since flour, yeast, and water cost much less than store-bought bread. These sandwiches were messy, hearty, and perfect for feeding a table of hungry kids after school or a weekend afternoon outdoors. They were the kind of meal that could be doubled without much extra cost, making them popular for church picnics or potlucks. The sauce soaked into the bread just enough to make each bite juicy, but not so much that it fell apart before you finished eating. Many families added whatever vegetables they had, like diced peppers or carrots, to stretch the filling even further. Sloppy Joes were the perfect mix of comfort and thrift, the kind of food that stuck with you long after the plate was cleared. Grape and cheese salad was a sweet and savory cold dish that combined juicy, fresh grapes with cubes of sharp cheddar cheese and a touch of mayonnaise for added creaminess. This salad was a common favorite at family gatherings, potlucks, and holiday meals throughout the 1960s, appreciated for its unique blend of contrasting flavors and simple, quick assembly. The natural sweetness of the grapes perfectly balanced the tangy, robust flavor of the cheddar cheese, while the mayonnaise provided a smooth texture that brought all the elements together. Often served chilled on a bed of crisp lettuce or alongside other cold dishes, this recipe exemplified the era's fondness for pairing sweet fruits with savory ingredients in cold salads and appetizers. While it may seem unusual to modern tastes, grape and cheese salad remains a nostalgic symbol of inventive and approachable mid-century American cooking. It highlights the creativity and resourcefulness of home cooks who sought to create tasty dishes that were both convenient and visually appealing, capturing the comforting spirit of quick recipes from the 1960s. Homemade minestrone with seasonal vegetables was a soup that celebrated frugality and adaptability. The base was usually a tomato-infused broth, filled with whatever vegetables were available: green beans, carrots, zucchini, cabbage, along with beans and small pasta. The combination created a meal that was hearty and nourishing, with each bite offering a different texture and flavor. Minestrone could be made in large batches, perfect for feeding a family over several days. It reflected the 1970s ethos of making the most of what you had and wasting nothing. This humble yet flavorful soup brought warmth to the table without requiring expensive ingredients. Savory oatmeal bake proved that oats could be far more than a breakfast cereal, and that inexpensive pantry staples could hold their own at supper time. Rolled oats were mixed with diced onions, shredded cheese, beaten eggs, and a dash of black pepper, then baked until the top formed a golden crust. The result was a hearty loaf with a texture similar to meatloaf, but without the expense of beef. This dish allowed families to stretch their budgets while still offering a warm and filling dinner that paired well with a simple green salad or sliced tomatoes from the backyard garden. Cooks loved that the recipe welcomed additions like leftover vegetables or small bits of ham, making it an adaptable way to clear the refrigerator. Children often enjoyed the mild, nutty flavor, and leftovers could be sliced and reheated for breakfast the next morning. It embodied the frugal creativity of 1960s kitchens, where a bag of oats and a little cheese could become a main course worth serving to guests without apology. It's hard to imagine now, but there was a time when raisins weren't just a snack stuffed into lunchboxes. They were the star of a chilled salad dish. Pair them with crisp celery, a dollop of mayonnaise, and a touch of seasoning, and you've got what churchgoers in the 1970s knew as raisin salad. This wasn't your ordinary potluck dish. It was a blend of sweetness, crunch, and creamy indulgence that stood out in a sea of casseroles. Believe it or not, this dish became a go-to because it was affordable, easy to prepare, and just unusual enough to get people talking. Historically, salads like these reflected the era's obsession with convenience and creativity. Mid-century America saw a boom in recipes that combined unexpected ingredients. Think Jell-O with shrimp or hot dog casseroles. The availability of inexpensive dried fruits, thanks to California's booming raisin industry, made raisin salad both practical and economical for feeding a crowd. Its downfall was changing tastes. By the 1990s, the rise of fresher, lighter fare left mayo-based salads feeling, well, a little heavy. And let's face it, some modern palates weren't ready for raisins mingling with celery. Still, for those who grew up with it, this dish evokes warm memories of church picnics and community gatherings. So Chili Mac, same deal, right? Good value, good for the time it was in, but couldn't manage to keep up. It was a desperate way for people to reinvent chili in my retrospective, but maybe you'll feel differently. Lots of people really did take to chili and macaroni, so it's not like the idea wasn't worth trying. It's just that it wasn't really all that when compared to everything else that slowly started becoming available. Chili Mac was supposed to be a mix of chili con carne and macaroni, and chili con carne was definitely having its day in the 70s, but the dish had a focus on being convenient. That was what really drew people to it. Boxed macaroni and canned chili go together like butter on toast, and it meant that this was an easy-to-prepare option you could rely on any time of the week, any time of the day. You could bake it into a one-dish meal or bring it to a potluck. It was popular enough at school cafeterias, and some Southern families really swore against everything else when it came to their lunch options. It's still beloved because you can't beat the value at that price point, but it's also something people go to because of rose-tinted glasses and nostalgia. Vegetable chow mein with crispy noodles became a popular Chinese-American-style dinner in 1970s home kitchens, thanks to the availability of canned vegetables and crunchy packaged noodles. This version was a far cry from traditional Chinese cooking, but it offered an affordable, flavorful meal that felt a little exotic for the time. A simple sauce made from soy, broth, and cornstarch-coated stir-fried vegetables like celery, bean sprouts, and onions, which were served over a bed of crispy noodles. The combination of textures, soft vegetables and crunchy noodles, made it appealing to both kids and adults. It was a meatless option that still felt substantial, making it perfect for families trying to cut grocery costs. The recipe's adaptability meant that whatever vegetables were in the pantry could be used, keeping costs low and waste minimal. In a decade when international flavors were just starting to enter mainstream kitchens, vegetable chow mein offered a taste of something different without breaking the budget. It was a cheap, cheerful dinner that stood out from the usual weeknight meals while still being easy to prepare at home. Hamburger rice skillet pie demonstrated the 1960s knack for stretching a pound of meat to feed a crowd. Ground beef was cooked with onions, peppers, and a generous helping of cooked rice before being spread in a skillet or shallow casserole. A biscuit dough topping, brushed with milk for shine, transformed the humble filling into a pie that looked more luxurious than its ingredients suggested. By combining inexpensive rice with a small amount of meat, families could create a dish that was both hearty and economical, perfect for busy weeknights. The biscuit layer soaked up the savory juices as it baked, giving each slice a comforting blend of flavors and textures. Many homemakers wrote this recipe on index cards to keep near the stove because it could be made entirely from pantry staples. Children enjoyed the fluffy crust and mild seasoning, while parents appreciated how it filled plates without emptying wallets. This skillet pie remained a dependable favorite for decades because it embodied practicality without sacrificing taste or warmth at the dinner table. Chilled tomato gazpacho shots were a refreshing and flavorful cold appetizer that offered a taste of Mediterranean cuisine adapted to American kitchens in the 1960s. This recipe blended fresh tomatoes with cucumber, bell pepper, garlic, and seasonings into a smooth, chilled soup served in small shot glasses or appetizer cups. Gazpacho's cool temperature and vibrant, tangy flavor made it an ideal starter for summer meals and dinner parties, providing a light and healthy option before the main course. The quick blending process meant the dish could be prepared in 10 minutes or less, fitting the growing desire for fast yet impressive recipes. These tomato gazpacho shots showcased the era's interest in international flavors and novel presentations that elevated simple ingredients. Though gazpacho is more widely known today, serving it in shot-sized portions remains a charming retro way to enjoy this classic cold soup. This recipe reminds us of the 1960s fascination with global cuisine and stylish entertaining made easy. Shredded chicken sandwiches with barbecue sauce were an ideal way to make a small amount of poultry go a long way. By slow-cooking chicken with onions and a tangy sweet homemade barbecue sauce, cooks could create a flavorful filling that was both tender and juicy. The chicken could be pulled apart easily, stretching it across multiple soft rolls to feed a family or a group of guests. These sandwiches were often served at casual gatherings, potlucks, or weeknight dinners when something easy but crowd-pleasing was needed. The sauce soaked into the bread just enough to make each bite flavorful without being messy. This dish fit right into the 1970s style of making do with what you had and turning it into something memorable. Even with modest ingredients, it delivered comfort and a sense of abundance. Few desserts capture the retro charm of the mid-20th century like the pineapple upside-down cake. Its signature design, caramelized pineapple slices and bright red maraschino cherries embedded in a golden cake, made it as visually striking as it was delicious. Praise pineapple. Upside-down cake was more than just a dessert. It was a conversation piece at church potlucks and community dinners. The dish rose to popularity in the 1920s and 1930s thanks to the invention of canned pineapple by the Hawaiian Pineapple Company. Their marketing campaigns promoted recipes featuring pineapple, and the upside-down cake, with its sweet, sticky topping, became an instant hit. By the 1950s and 60s, it had become a potluck classic, celebrated for its simplicity. Just one pan, and its ability to turn everyday ingredients into a dessert that felt festive. As tastes evolved in the late 20th century, the cake began to lose its luster. The heavy use of canned ingredients and its sugary glaze didn't align with the growing emphasis on fresh, lighter desserts. Additionally, its iconic appearance became a symbol of an earlier era, less appealing to younger bakers seeking more modern flavors and aesthetics. So savory bread pudding is a weird one. I mean, you can't say we didn't give it a shot. We definitely did, and more of a shot than it honestly deserved. This Depression-era recipe started to be something that was just a way for people to repurpose their bread. It meant that you were honestly never going to waste any bread. If you had stale bread, some eggs, and milk, then you would just make a savory bread pudding out of it. Seemed simple enough, right? Well, back in a time when there was literally nothing to eat ever, it was an appetizing option too. As things started returning to normal and people started to gain access to everything we've talked about so far on this list, well, a lot of people just thought it was easier to let that bread die. People had moved on from custards, and they were slowly starting to move on from puddings. This bread pudding, as hard as it may have tried, just couldn't keep up with that. Besides, people's bread wasn't really going stale enough to warrant this recipe being widespread knowledge. canned peaches with whipped cream was a beloved easy dessert in mid-century America, combining sweet canned peach slices topped with a generous layer of light, sweetened whipped cream. This no-fuss treat required no baking or cooking, making it a go-to choice for families wanting a simple yet satisfying finish to any meal. The juicy, tender peaches paired perfectly with the creamy richness of the whipped topping, creating a classic combination of textures and flavors. Often served in individual bowls or dishes, this dessert was a staple at summer dinners, holiday gatherings, and potlucks. Its convenience and deliciousness reflected the 1960s love for canned goods and quick recipes that fit busy lifestyles. Though fresh fruit desserts have become more popular today, canned peaches with whipped cream remain a nostalgic symbol of easy homemade sweets from the era. Homemade pot pie with biscuit topping offered the comfort of a classic without the expense of store-bought frozen versions. Instead of a traditional pie crust, which could be time-consuming and require more costly butter, cooks topped the filling with drop biscuits made from flour, milk, and shortening. The filling was a clever way to use up leftover meats, most often chicken, turkey, or beef, combined with inexpensive vegetables like peas, carrots, and potatoes in a creamy sauce thickened with flour. The biscuit topping baked into a golden, tender layer that absorbed some of the savory filling, making every bite warm and satisfying. For many families, this dish was a perfect example of turning odds and ends into something that felt like a treat. The aroma of the biscuits baking with the bubbling filling underneath made the whole kitchen smell inviting. It was a meal that blended frugality with a sense of homey indulgence. Cheese-topped rice ring turned plain rice into an eye-catching centerpiece that delighted both family members and guests while keeping costs low. Cooked rice was mixed with beaten eggs and lightly seasoned before being pressed into a greased ring mold and baked until firm. After unmolding, the golden rice ring was filled with a medley of creamed vegetables such as peas, carrots, or spinach, then topped with a scattering of melted cheese for a touch of richness. This presentation gave the appearance of a special occasion dish despite relying on everyday pantry staples. Home cooks enjoyed how flexible the recipe was, allowing them to use leftover vegetables or whatever cheese they had available. It provided a balanced meal of grains, vegetables, and dairy while remaining budget-friendly and easy to prepare ahead of time. Cheese-topped rice ring stands as a testament to the imaginative flair of 1960s kitchens, where economical ingredients were transformed into something festive and memorable that could grace both a Sunday dinner table and a neighborhood potluck with equal success. In the 1970s, practicality often dictated the dinner table, and few dishes embodied that spirit better than a warm, hearty pot of gospel goulash, combining macaroni, ground beef, and tomato sauce. This one-pot wonder was a crowd pleaser at church gatherings and family dinners alike. Simple, filling, and endlessly adaptable, it was the kind of meal that brought everyone to the table without breaking the budget. The dish draws its roots from Hungarian goulash, though the Americanized version took significant creative liberties. By the mid-20th century, macaroni, ground beef, and canned tomato products were affordable staples in nearly every pantry. Families stretched what they had, tossing in whatever vegetables or seasonings were on hand to create a meal that could satisfy both appetites and budgets. Its simplicity made it versatile, easy to scale for a potluck, and forgiving enough for even the most distracted home cooks. Over time, however, gospel goulash began to fade. The rise of more sophisticated pasta dishes, such as lasagna or baked ziti, offered more texture and flavor complexity, pushing this humble dish to the sidelines. As tastes evolved, its one-pot simplicity started to feel less exciting. Still, for many, it remains a nostalgic favorite, a reminder of family dinners, church potlucks, and the ingenuity of making a little go a long way. Cabbage and noodle stir-fry, often called haluski, was a humble yet comforting dish rooted in Eastern European tradition and adopted in many American kitchens for its simplicity and low cost. Wide egg noodles were tossed with sautéed cabbage and onions cooked in plenty of butter until everything was tender and slightly caramelized. The sweetness of the cabbage balanced the savory richness of the butter, creating a dish that was greater than the sum of its parts. Haluski could be served on its own for a meatless dinner or as a hearty side alongside sausages or roasted meats. It was especially popular during colder months when cabbage was inexpensive and easy to store, making it a reliable staple for budget-conscious households. The recipe required only a handful of ingredients, yet delivered a deeply satisfying flavor that kept it in regular rotation. Some cooks added bits of bacon or kielbasa for extra richness when budgets allowed, while others kept it purely vegetarian. In either case, it was a dish that offered warmth, familiarity, and comfort, reminding families that simple, affordable cooking could still be full of heart and tradition without requiring expensive ingredients. Chicken and celery salad cups were a refreshing and hearty cold dish that featured shredded cooked chicken combined with crunchy celery and creamy mayonnaise, served in crisp lettuce or endive cups. This 10-minute recipe was a favorite at 1960s cocktail parties and family gatherings for its convenience and attractive presentation. The chicken and celery mixture was lightly seasoned and chilled, providing a cool, satisfying filling that balanced the tender meat with fresh, crisp vegetables. Serving the salad in lettuce or endive leaves allowed for an elegant finger food option that was both light and filling. This dish showcased the era's talent for transforming simple ingredients into stylish, easy-to-eat appetizers. Though modern tastes have shifted towards different wraps and dips, chicken and celery salad cups remain a delightful example of mid-century American entertaining that combined speed, flavor, and sophistication. Which forgotten comfort food do you wish would make a comeback? Share your favorite memories in the comments below, hit the like button, and subscribe so you never miss another trip down memory lane.